Okay. Okay, this is not going to be what you guys expect. I was telling Shauna, which is why she was concerned I wouldn't be here. There's a guy here working on our hot tub. He showed up a little late. He was supposed to be here this morning and gone by now, but it's just not how it worked out. And what's happening is Ron is on a plane. I'm communicating between the two of them on texts. I'm actually not available. So I might be available for the hours out, but I'm not really available right now. I told him I had to run in and give you guys instructions. So I'm going to give you some instructions. Are you ready? First of all, is there anybody here that has 7 steps and out of the stillness? Okay, good. So Anya, I saw your hand. You feel like being a facilitator? Yeah.
Okay.
He says, no, yeah, no, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I will.
All right, so here's what I'm going to ask you guys to do. I'm going to give you the ones I was going to go over today. And what you'll do is you'll read from 7 steps, read from Out of the Stillness like I normally do.
Oh, sorry, Gina. I don't have Out of the Stillness. I only have 7 steps.
Okay, who has
Sorry.
Out of the Stillness? Okay, let's see. Joe's going to help you out. Okay, Anya and Joe can work together. Anya, you can read out of 7 steps. Joe, you can then read the same one out of the stillness. And then all of you will talk about it, share on it. I will be back as soon as I can, of course, and join in when I can. I might even be coming and going during the hour. Now, I'll put in the text which ones I was going to do today. I was going to do 507, 515, 516, and if we got that far, 521, and then that was going to be the end of step 2 for me. We would be starting step 3 next time. So there they are, 507, 515, 516, and 521. You guys get started on your own. I will join you when I can, and that's how we're going to have to do it today. Deal? Okay. Have at it. I'm muting myself in case I'm talking to a hot tub guy. I got to run out there right now. He's waiting on me.
I have to get my book from downstairs, so I'll be right back. Okay, you ready? I shall read the first quote from 7 Steps to Awakening, quote 507. Let me check from who it is. It's from Supreme Yoga. What you have called the body does not exist in the eyes of the sage. So I will read it one more time. What you have called the body does not exist in the eyes of the sage.
Okay, thank you, Anya. This is number 507 from Out of the Stillness. If I am not this body, he is not that body. She is not that body. When I focus on being as what I am not only focusing on what I am, I am focusing on what he is and what she is. Being is not local. How about if I read that again? If I am not this body, he is not that body. She is not that body. When I focus on being as what I am not only focusing on what I am focusing on what he is and what she is. Being is not local.
Can I say something about that? Yeah, because lately I've been asking myself when I'm in the room together with my husband and I'm doing some meditation, I ask myself, where am I? And then it seems to be I'm everywhere. So I'm also where he is. So somehow this, it's this what Regina was contemplating somehow reminds me of this experience I have. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to say about this. Thank you. Someone else maybe wants to share.
I can pop in for a moment. He went to his truck to get something. But I'm gonna be popping out again. But you know, when I look at this, when it says being is not local and there's an exclamation point, what that says to me is that's when I knew that for myself. Like this was my very first realization of that. You know, certainly I had read it, certainly I had learned it. But in contemplating this, somehow I knew it. You know, and of course, the best way to talk about it probably is if we all focus on awareness life. I'm going to put awareness life as one thing here. If we all focus on awareness life, we are all focusing on the exact same thing. If I focus on what I might think about how today isn't working out the way, you know, we imagined it would work out, and you're thinking, you know, you're focusing on your thinking about how today hasn't worked out the way we imagined, we aren't focusing on the same thing. Right? Whatever, you know, maybe I think it's perfect and you think this shouldn't have happened. Maybe I think this shouldn't have happened. And, you know, Anya thinks it's perfect and Joe's nervous about having a COVID. I mean, who knows, right? It's not the same. But when we skip all that and we just focus on life awareness, we are all focusing on the exact same thing. So why do we say it's separate? Why do we say it's local? You know, local meaning coming from this body. We don't have any proof of that. It's just a belief, right? And he's back out there, so I'm going to head back out, but I'll let you guys continue from there and I'll come back when I can.
Okay, I see a hand up. Tina.
I actually just loved what Meg said in the thing.
Yeah.
If we could read that.
Yeah, let me have a look. Meg says, awareness has no location, the ultimate time traveler. So it both has no location and no time. Yeah.
And
Yeah, well, I always love what Meg says, so thank you for pointing that out. My chat wasn't on. So this morning, when we were, those of us that were together in the sanctuary contemplating, being aware of awareness, which is being aware of this being that I can get in touch with by letting go and coming in, and something's here. Like there's a sense that something's here. You can call it being, you can call it awareness, life awareness, but forgetting that, letting go of the names for a second, just there is this sense that something's being, that there's beingness, there's the act of being. And then we contemplated this quote by Adyashanti from The Way of Liberation, which to me just says in different words what Regina contemplated and what's been shared here so far. And this is the quote. The quote is, being is our original condition. Prior to all egoic antics, prior to all thought, prior to all description, prior to past, present, and future. And so what I heard Regina just say is that when we turn attention inward and look, we're all looking from the same place at the same place. And what Meg said, which is that it's the ultimate time traveler, right? Because it's prior to past, present, and future. It just is. And it's original in that it wasn't, I didn't conjure it up by putting attention on some thoughts and taking it away from others. And I didn't create it. It's just this natural knowingness of beingness, this being. And so then the only question that seems to arise is, what does attention want to be on? Because I'll notice in meditation, it'll be like, oh yeah, I get this. And this is being, this is prior to everything. I'm right there, right? Oh my God, yeah, cool. And then all of a sudden there's this really pretty red bird. And attention just loves. I mean, I'm home free. No. Attention just loves to go out and be like, that's a cool bird. I wonder what kind that is. And I should get my bird book out. And I wonder what that's called. I should ask my brother-in-law. And that would be, I should thank him for the feeder. Because that was really nuts. I should really thank my sister for putting bird seed in the feeder. I mean, next thing you know, and that's all. And I'm getting more relaxed with watching the journey of attention, which I heard Helen Hamilton one time say, all we ever do in this life in the end is watch the journey of attention when we're engaged in outward focus. And that's all just part of it. And so it for me, it brings me right back to a place where I can rest. And from that resting place of being our original condition, I can then watch kind of being in motion or in tasting mode or in discovery mode. Being takes the form of, it's like that little silly putty Regina used to show us, right? There's that little attention, Rupert Spira talks about attender or something like that, just to stretch out, to go towards. And then I can watch attention go to birds and other things and thoughts about that. And then eventually it's yeah, okay, done with that. And then I actually want to know the original condition again. And then it comes back and attention rests home. And then there's this kind of being with the being again. And it's all sometimes seen as a flow, not so much a destination. And I'm either in the right one or the wrong one. And that loosening up also feels very natural. So that's it. Thank you.
And came something to my mind when Anne was talking about seeing a bird, and then the mind started thinking about the bird, what kind of bird is this, but I was wondering, I can also see the bird, but without the mind saying anything. But so I was contemplating that, and I think it is looking at the bird without the mind. Maybe that is looking from the beingness. So, yeah.
In the program before this, we were towards the end of it, we were talking about, or what was being talked about was judgment and how judgments arise, how to let go of judgments, those sorts of things. And then we played that, Helena had that great song played at the end, which is a beautiful song. But what, that's pretty obvious. This isn't a deep insight, but what's being judged. And when I notice judgments, what's being judged is form, something in form, or something that comes out of form. The ideas that come out of form, what a person says, or the sound of their voice, the way they look, all of those things have to do with form, rather than, so beingness is not being judged, and it's also not beingness that is judging. It's what's arising out of this form, this personality, this body-mind personality that is doing the judging too. Like I said, that's not a real deep insight. It just, for some reason, it just helps me to say that out loud, right? It's not, it's just, yeah. So, thanks, that's all.
Does anyone else wants to say something about the quote or Regina's contemplations or the other contemplations?
Could I say something else?
Yeah, go ahead.
Taking what Joe just said about the judgment and judgments and always something in form. I recall vividly being in gentle healing, what's that, year 3, and I would read these kind of quotes. So again, right, 507, what you have called the body does not exist in the eyes of the sage. I can remember like it was yesterday, the judgment. It's like, you suck. You still see a body, and you still call it a body. You don't just see a body, you call it a body. And you keep doing that. And you're never going to see from the eyes of the sages. And I remember I used to have this like internally divided experience. And contemplation, you're supposed to be all open. And I was like, I remember just being like, what the am I going to write about this quote? Because I had no awareness, didn't land on the fact that what there was to do was to say something along the lines of what Joe just said, which is like, wow, notice a lot of judgment. And if I really be with the judgments is always in form. And just trust that whatever's coming up is my clarity in that moment. No. I would read this and be like, all right, I would try to imagine what a sage would see, and then the eyes and what are my eyes. And I would try to like get this, I would like rub out my eyes like with an eraser and get the sage's eyes. And then I would try to like not see a body. And then I would try to imagine if I had the right eyes and I didn't see a body, what would the sage write? Because I certainly want to write something good for gentle healing. Like I'm just so lost in the rabbit hole. And it was just, so anxiety producing, and none of it seen, none of it met, none of it rested with, none of it even called out. Just this big, I am bad and wrong and stupid. And I read it now, and I have such compassion for whatever that mechanism is that just went straight to self-blame and straight to just absolute, denigration of my desire to contemplate quotes. Like even that was completely knocked out. Like you're not even doing it. You're just trying to get it over with. And it was like, and part of me was like, I kind of am. And it was like, see, and it was like, it was it. So I just appreciate reading this now. This is a number of years later. And just the fact that whatever this game is that consciousness sets up, not only lets me see how I see now, which is to kind of intuit that they're pointing to essence, and sage sees the essence over the form, right? And that's kind of an evolved seeing that I have like glimpses into, but I certainly don't see like that. And yet at the same time, in the same consciousness, it can replay all those old tapes exactly as they were said then and as it was felt then. So I can literally, as I'm speaking, rest the thoughts about it accept all the feelings and just trust that even just this speaking is healing all the secondary suffering that used to be added when I tried to be a good spiritual student and contemplate quotes in Gentle Healing 3. So it's just this miracle of like when I truly surrender to the fact that it's all happening for me. It's never happening to me. It's happening for me. All of a sudden, doors open to how even this moment can be for me, deeper and deeper, healing stuff from 5 years ago that I forgot used to play here. And so it just feels like this miracle that something's always looking after us. And as long as my only, I guess, job or doing is to check to see what I'm really wanting right now, what I'm really wanting in this moment, like why I'm here, why I'm even reading these words. And if it's just to let whatever come up and heal it, and then, maybe even glimpse a little bit of the truth, if it is thy will, then that process kind of does itself. And I get to watch that too. And the whole thing just feels like a miracle. So thank you for letting me meander through that little eddy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Let me have a look if I see more hands. Then I would suggest, I see a hand. Sias, please.
Good morning. Yes, I couldn't
Hi.
find my hand. Hi.
Hi.
What comes up for me is recently I listened to Eckhart Tolle, who described, he was quite curious in terms of the English language of human and being. And so what's helped me where I am at this stage is because in other languages, like my native language, the word is just means. So it's just one word. So with contemplating the difference between human and being, and I find myself, if I focus on the being, I experience a sense of equanimity. And then as Anne was saying, it's then as if the compassion comes up. And as if then, if I'm more present with the experience than what the mind is saying around the anxiety, how does this person see me, or those judgments, or and I find myself something that awareness just kind of happens as an interaction between two people. It's just there is just more a sense of presence. And I find myself just wallowing my nervous system in that. And it's if in my, and it's something in my personal relationships or my working, or even at the supermarket. If I focus on the being, it's just, it's like the quality just changes. So that's where my understanding of where this is, that the body doesn't exist. It's kind of like just a vessel carrying whatever that awareness is. So that's what, when I read this, that's what came up for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sias. Yeah, I think it's a part of, it's also in Eckhart Tolle's book. He has I think a paragraph about that most of our communication is communication through the mind, but that you also can communicate through, I don't know which word he uses, the beingness or the presence. So, yeah. Okay, let's have a look if I see more hands. There was also something in the chat from Meg about happening and happiness. Okay, then I will read the next quote that Regina listed. It's quote 515, and it's from Sri Sankara. Okay. The living organism, which is thought to belong to oneself through its identification with the intellect, does not really exist, On the other hand, the true self is quite distinct from it, and the identification of oneself with the intellect is due to misunderstanding. Maybe I shall read it one more time for the ones who are... the living organism, which is thought to belong to oneself through its identification with the intellect, does not really exist. On the other hand, the true self is quite distinct from it, and the identification of oneself with the intellect is due to misunderstanding.
Thank you, Anya. Here's Regina's contemplation of that quote. What is before body and before mind? Can I say I am separate from that? Look, what is my honest answer? Is there something that cannot be named, cannot be seen, and yet cannot be separated from what I am? Again, what is before mind? What is before body and before mind? Can I say I am separate from that? Look, what is my honest answer? Is there something that cannot be named, cannot be seen, and yet cannot be separated from what I am? I would, I think, share one thing is when Anya was reading from 7 Steps, and I don't have my 7 Steps book here, but it seems like Adi Sankara was talking about identification with the intellect, or being mind identified. And so any movement away from that, like Anne mentioned earlier about the movement of attention, or just observing the movement of attention, any movement away from that, identification with the mind, and just recognizing it, just recognizing that is not what I am, or being willing to question, is that what I am, is orienting me in the right direction. It's just orienting in the, I guess, right direction. That's the word that's coming up now. I don't know if that's the that's the only word that's coming to mind now. But anything I do to question any form of self-inquiry is taking me towards what Regina's asking here. Can I say I am separate from that? And is there something that cannot be named, cannot be seen, and yet cannot be separated from what I am? And just the honest looking into that. So that's what I'd share now. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say I saw that I think it's Andy has put the quote also in the chat. So if you want to reread the quote, go to the chat and it's there. So what I've been wondering lately is, what if I stop listening to the mind entirely? So that is a question what I've been contemplating. And I see, George, your hand is up. Go ahead, George.
Hi, everyone. The thing that strikes me, identification of oneself with intellect is due to misunderstanding. I've come to realize I have a lot of beliefs. And I realized I don't really know. I don't know anything. And yet I trust that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be. And my understanding is not necessary. All I can really do is just watch and see what comes up. So, you know, this is kind of exciting. The realization that I don't know, and that's okay. So I'll stop.
Thank you, George. I think that's freedom. And I see Regina's back, so maybe Regina wants to say something. I don't know.
Well, where are you guys?
We were at quotes 515.
Okay,
And
well,
we're talking about the identification of oneself with the intellect is due to misunderstanding. That was what George was talking about.
okay, let me peek at that. By the way, those of you who just had this experience, this is kind of a good example of next week's retreat, which is the Sangha is the new guru. I think that's what you guys just demonstrated. So thank you very much. I'm going to read 515 for me. Is that okay if I do that? So I know where we're at. What is before body and before mind? Can I say I am separate from that? Look, what is my honest answer? Is there something that cannot be named, cannot be seen, and yet cannot be separated from what I am? So how far did you guys get in discussing this? Did you try it? Yeah, you tried it. Joe, go ahead and tell me what's going on.
Well, Joe made a comment, and then George made a comment, and but what we kind of focused on was the from the 7 steps about the identification with the intellect being the issue, and moving away from that in some way. So yeah, that's where we've gotten with this. It hasn't been a long discussion yet. So
okay, well, as you guys know, when I was going through the 7 steps, you know, I was looking. Looking is always the key word for me when I was going through the 7 steps. I was looking. So what would be happening here then, and we can do this together, is the first question: what is before body and before mind? Now, the word before here doesn't mean in time. If it did mean in time, we would have to start thinking like, okay, before body and before mind, there was a sperm and there was an egg, right? We'd have to go into thinking. This means right now. You know, like right now, what can I find that is before the body and before the mind? So first of all, if it's before the body and before the mind, that means that both the body and the mind are an object to it, right? So another way to say this maybe would have been, what sees the body? What sees the mind, right? So we can do that right this second. The body might be the easiest to start with. So what you can do, if your eyes are closed, is notice any sensation at all in the body. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be, for me, it could be my hair touching my neck, my bottom on the seat, my hand holding my shirt. It could be a tingling within. It could be a pain. It's irrelevant. You just pick any sensation. And then you notice that you are aware of that sensation as an object. You know, for example, if it's my elbow against the countertop here, the elbow and the countertop are not aware of I. I am aware of the elbow and the countertop. Can you see that with whatever your sensation is? It is the object. I am the subject. So it's clear here that I is before the body. It's the subject, it's before. So now the next trick is to do that with the mind. Now, sometimes the mind is a little more challenging because when you start trying to look at it like this, it gets quiet. So you have to wait for it to start chattering again. But you just sit and you wait for any thoughts to arise, you know, and as Angelo DeLullo likes to point out, sometimes those thoughts are about the practice itself. The first thought could even be, I don't see any thoughts. Doesn't matter what thought arises. When those thoughts do arise, notice that you are aware of them the same way you were aware of the sensations in the body. Thoughts sometimes can appear more subtle, not always. We all know there can be loud thoughts. But thoughts sometimes can appear more subtle than the feeling, for example, of the elbow against the granite. And sometimes the mind will try and trick you with that subtlety by telling you it's not the same. But if you ask yourself, is this thought aware of I, or is I aware of the thought, you can clearly see that answer. So you guys just stay with that and I'll continue with number 515. So what I'm calling I here, that's what's before the body and before the mind. We could also call it the subject. But the next question is, can I say that I am separate from that? So we've just seen a sensation as an object. We've seen thought as an object. The real question is the seer itself. Does that feel like an object in the same way? Can I see what I'm seeing from? Or is that I? Can I separate myself from the, people like to use the word seer. Sometimes I think it's better to put an ing on it, because seer or knower makes it sound like an object. But my experience is it's more seeing or knowing. Can I separate myself from it, or is it what I am? That's what this question really is. It says, what is my honest answer? And the question just continues, is there something that cannot be named? I've been calling it I, but that's just, it doesn't really have a name. Is there something that cannot be named? cannot be seen, and yet cannot be separated from what I am. So that's 5:15. So since you guys have been chatting, and now that we've done that, let's see who wants to share based on that little looking. All right, Helena.
Well, I've just written, if I stop listening to the mind, what is left is I. And this exercise you just did, I could feel it. I don't know if feel is the right word, but yeah, thank you.
It's a good word. In fact, it's the word that Ramana Maharshi would use. He would ask people to feel it. Who else wants to share? All right, Anya.
With the practice with the sensation, I somehow had I don't know if it's experience, but I was wondering, was sort of becoming the sensation. So it was more without the I.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt more like I could dissolve into the sensation.
Yeah.
So
then there's no difference between I and the sensation.
yeah.
Right? There's no subject anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's what they mean by no subject, no object. That dissolving into that you pointed to. Meg.
That's me splitting away from the ego. Hey, Regina. Yeah, to go back to the previous contemplation with not being able to find a location, that's been really piercing through to the next contemplation. So when I felt non-location reading this quote, what happened was the quote popped out to everything that could be in location, everything that had a relationship to its timefulness. So then I just wrote, because that's the only thing that's happening instead of mouth words, is the thought to belong, and living organism is to capture your awareness location. So if you identify that as location with intellect, then that is the vacillation between understanding and understanding and standing as location. And then true self frees awareness from location. Infinite intelligent does something else, because intelligence doesn't become located in intellect. And I don't free myself. I don't free awareness from that. Awareness frees that from me. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Melanie.
Yeah, I'm wondering about what you said before about the sensation, because I did that as you were speaking it. And I, Melanie, the character, felt the pain in my eye. But was I supposed to be the I, the higher self, feeling the pain in my eye? I was a little confused because
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, believe it or not, you want to take both of them out of there. Take I, Melanie, out of there, and I, higher self, out of there. Because the reason is they're both concepts.
oh,
So if there is no such, so like you're trying, so it's almost like, even though you may have been doing it experientially, at the same time, you were intellectually trying to figure out who I is or what I is. So believe it or not, I'm actually asking you to drop that. Pretend like you never, ever, ever heard of a higher self. Like you can't think of it because you never heard of it. And pretend like you have amnesia, so you don't know your Melanie.
okay.
Yet this, what I'm talking about, is still here. Even if you've never heard of a higher self and you forgot about a Melanie, this that is aware of the pain in the eye is still here. That's what I want you to look at.
Oh,
That's why the quote says it's unnamed.
so something. So when I do that exercise, so just to be aware that something is aware of the pain, and I
Yeah.
don't know what that, and I don't know what it is.
You don't have to know what, but you do. I mean, like if I asked you, is it you? You could at least say, yes, I am aware of the pain. But you don't have to
Right.
worry about who I am. Right? You don't have to worry about whether
Oh.
I am Melanie or whether I am higher self, but it's absolutely clear to me that I am real, that I exist, and I am aware of the pain. And then what we do is we shift our attention to, and again, I have to use a name to talk about it. We shift our attention to that I. So we learn to shift our attention, because what we typically do is we typically identify with the thinking and with the body. So like we say, you know, I, pointing to the body, or I, pointing to the mind. Well, this, as Meg was pointing out, is non-locatable. I can't really point to this I. It's what's aware of the body. It's what's aware of the mind. That it definitely exists. And it's definitely what I am, because I can't separate myself from it. I can't point at it over there. You know, Jesus used to talk about how you can't point at it over there. I can't even, if I have a belief that it's in my brain, I may point here and say, oh, I think it's here. Or if I have a belief that's in my eyes, I may point here. Or if I have a belief that's in my chest, I may point here. But if I really pay attention, let's say the belief is that it's in my head, okay? The belief is that it's in my head, that this is where the I is. If I really pay attention, if you look at your head with your awareness, you'll notice there are sensations in the head. I don't know what they are. I'm not a neurologist. Could be just the brain firing, but there are definitely sensations in the head, no doubt about it. So you focus on those sensations in this head where maybe your belief says I lives. You notice that you are aware of those sensations. But then also notice that if you wanted to, you could kind of draw around them. Like you might say, oh, well, they're in here. They're in here. And I might say, where's the top of those sensations? Oh, they're here. Where's the bottom of those sensations? Actually, I think they come all the way down to here. So you can see the top, you can see the bottom, you can see the around, you can see the within. Wait a minute. You see all of that as an object. Where are you? You know, I saw a video once that I loved. I think I've played it in some of the retreats before, where if you pointed at the head and said, this is where I am, I'm in the head. And they might ask you, you know, where is it? The top of the head, the bottom of the head? Clearly it's the top of the head. That's where I am. Okay.
Okay.
Slice the head in half. Can you find I on one half or the other? And, you know, and if somebody should happen to say, yeah, I think I'm over here, well, then slice it in half again. And eventually they could get down to a small enough piece where the person would say, wait a minute, I'm not in the head. You know, I'm not there. So the point is, there is something that does exist that I am. But as Meg was pointing out, go ahead, Melanie.
And that I am is aware of the object, is aware of the pain.
Mm-hmm. But if I call that my higher self, if I call that Melanie, then I'm adding a concept to it, you know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So forget that part. Just notice that it actually exists and it is what I am. And I can't really define what it is. We call it awareness, but to me, awareness is a little flat. Like I would have to hyphenate it. It's a awareness, life, being, is, you know?
And that's what I am, and to focus on that rather than the object.
Yes. Did that help you?
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Okay, Helena.
Very quickly, I should have called you because I've been battling for a month about I, Helena, and I, higher self. And now you just explained to me what I've been doing. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you know, all those symbols at some point are very, very helpful. But as we go, this is probably going back to whatever Joe and George were talking about. As we go further and further and further, we have to drop more and more of the symbols that were helpful in the beginning. And even, you know, higher self. You know, I still use the word God. I like the word God. You got to use words when you talk. But higher self, God, Christ, you know, all these, whatever names we may have applied to it, we have to drop those names at some point, because what those names are doing is somehow keeping it separate from me. Right? The higher self is an object I reach for or something. You know what I mean? It's not quite me, it's higher than me. That's why I call it the higher self. Right? So at some point, all those ideas have to be dropped. They're helpful for a while, and then they become the obstacle.
And that is exactly what was happening. It was an obstacle.
Yeah.
Oh my God, thank you so much. Oh.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anyone else want to share? George. And then Meg after George.
Okay. You know, that's
Not you, Shauna. Go ahead, George. I'm just teasing Shauna. Go ahead, George.
there's an aspect of spirit or God, and I like to think of it as the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit to me is that aspect of God within this illusion of time and space, and it is an illusion. And so the awareness that I have, I think, is George. George is aware. I'm also thinking George doesn't really even exist. George is a construct, a story in this time and space, as well as each one of us. We're just a story, a construct. Why do we have this? I don't know, not a clue, but that's sort of the way that I'm perceiving it.
Thank you. Meg.
Beautiful. Yeah, that was such a clear, helpful distinction for language to assist, to escort that discernment process, which is so helpful. It separates the wheat from the chaff, right? and then there's that merging of, like, you know, my higher self and my lower self become self. My higher power and my lower power becomes power. So self-power now needs identity, and it's freaking out and thinks it's going to disappear and go to a death that doesn't exist, because that's what my identity's been talking me into. So there's this crossing over of the helpfulness becoming useless to become wholly useful in a sight that the intellect will misuse if it's not distributed properly, I suppose, you know. So yeah, that's just a helpful distinction in the bridge. Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess for my own clarity, it looks like we probably got through 5:15, but we haven't done 5:16 or 5:21. Is that the one I said? Yeah. So those two are still to be done before we finish this step 2. Next week, I am in retreat in Levita, so I will not be here, but I'll see some of y'all there, right? Let me check my calendar real quick. I think the week after that is still May, so I think I will be here the week after that. Yeah, it's May 29th, the week after that. So, and that is in my calendar. So there's somewhat of a commitment to be here, but anybody who knows me knows that somehow life is spinning out of control for me. I never know when anything's going to happen. Today was an obvious example, but right now it's in my calendar. I plan to be here, and we'll see what happens on May 29th. Does that sound like a deal to everybody? And I will see many of you next week in Levita. I'm looking forward to that. All right, that's it. Bye.